Imagine the year is 1863. The United States is tearing itself apart in a civil war. Somewhere in the mud and the cold, a boy named Arthur Morgan is born. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose the era. You were simply dropped into a timeline that had no plans for you. Your father, Lyle Morgan, was a man whose soul had been eroded by failure. He wasn't a legendary gunslinger. He was a petty thief, a violent drunk, and a man who looked at his son not with love, but with the resentment of another mouth to feed. By the time you are 11, he is dead. You watch him die, and the only thing you feel is a cold, hollow relief. But that relief is dangerous. A boy with no father is a boy with a hole in his chest, and in the Old West, nature abhors a vacuum. You are a stray dog wandering the outskirts of a civilization that is building factories and gallows. You are starving. You are illiterate. You are the perfect clay for a sculptor with a dark imagination. Then, you meet the sculptor. Dutch van der Linde. He is young, charismatic, and he speaks with the silver tongue of a preacher. He doesn't look at you like a burden. He looks at you like a son. He feeds you. He teaches you to read. He hands you a copy of King Arthur and tells you that you are named after a king. But this is the first reason why it sucks to be born an outlaw. You weren't adopted by a father, you were recruited by a cult leader. Dutch didn't save you for your sake, he saved you because he needed a loyal hand to hold a gun. He took your trauma and turned it into a weapon. He convinced you that robbing a stagecoach wasn't a crime, it was a political statement. He told you that the law was a cage, and he was the only man with the key. For 20 years, you live in this beautiful lie. You spend your youth under the stars, riding through the heartlands, believing that you are part of a noble brotherhood. You think you are free. But the irony of being an outlaw in the Van der Linde gang is that you are the least free person in America. You don't own your horse, you don't own your camp, and most importantly, you don't own your mind. You have traded the laws of the United States for the whims of one man. And as long as Dutch is happy, life is good. But Dutch is a man who can only be happy if he is winning. And in 1899, the winning is about to stop. The year is now 1899. This is the era of the Gilded Age. The wild places of the world are being mapped, fenced, and sold to the highest bidder. This is the second reason why it sucks to be an outlaw. You have stayed the same, but the world has moved on. You wake up in the snow of the Grizzlies. The Blackwater Massacre has just happened. You don't know exactly what went wrong, but for the first time in your life, you saw Dutch panic. You saw him kill an innocent woman. You saw your brothers, Davy and Jenny, die in the dirt. The noble outlaw life is suddenly looking very ugly, very cold, and very permanent. You are 36 years old. In the late 1800s, 36 is middle-aged. Your back aches. Your hands are scarred. Every time it rains, you feel the old bullet wounds tingle. You look at the younger members of the gang, Lenny, Sean, even John Marston, and you see the same blind loyalty that used to burn in you. But in you, the fire is dying. You are starting to see the cracks in the masterpiece. You ride into the town of Valentine, and you see the future. You see lawmen who aren't just local sheriffs you can bribe, but federal agents with badges from the Pinkerton Detective Agency. These men don't care about freedom. They care about efficiency. They have telegraphs. They can send your description across the entire country in seconds. They have Gatling guns that can turn a legendary gunslinger into pink mist before he even clears his holster. Being an outlaw in 1899 is like being a professional swordfighter in the age of the sniper rifle. You are obsolete. You are a museum exhibit that hasn't realized it's behind glass yet. Every time you rob a train, you aren't striking a blow for the common man. You are just giving the government more reasons to build a bigger prison. The world is trading the horse for the locomotive. It is trading the campfire for the electric light bulb. And it is trading men like Arthur Morgan for accountants and factory foremen. You realize that your entire life's work, the 20 years of blood and sweat you gave to Dutch, has resulted in exactly nothing. You have no money of your own. You have no land. You have no legacy. You have spent your life building a house on a foundation of sand, and the tide is coming in fast. Now we reach the most cruel part of the story. The part that makes Arthur Morgan's life a true tragedy rather than just a sad western. We have to talk about Thomas Downs. Thomas Downs is a man who represents everything Dutch claims to hate, a man broken by the system, a man who worked himself to death and got nothing but debt in return. But because Dutch's philosophy is actually just a cover for greed, he sends you, his best enforcer, to beat the money out of this dying man. You go to that farm. You see the wife and the son. You see the poverty. And you do what you were trained to do since you were 14. You use your fists. You use your fear. You beat a man who was already coughing up his own lungs. And in that moment, the universe decides it has seen enough of Arthur Morgan's cruelty. A single drop of blood. A single wet cough. That is all it takes. In the 21st century, we think of sickness as a nuisance. In 1899, tuberculosis was a death sentence. It was the White Plague. It didn't kill you fast. It didn't give you the dignity of a bullet in a gunfight. It rotted you from the inside out. It turned your breath into fire and your strength into water. This is the ultimate why it sucks moment. You spent your whole life preparing for a violent end. You expected to go out in a blaze of glory, surrounded by lawmen, screaming a final defiance. Instead, you are going to die in a bed, or on a rock, unable to even draw a full breath. The irony is staggering. You were the strongest man in the gang. You were the big shadow. And you were taken down by a man you considered weak. You were destroyed by the very weakness you were sent to exploit. This is where the script of your life takes a turn. The world is no longer about the plan. It's no longer about the score. It's about the fact that your clock has run out of ticks. As the fever begins to set in, you start to see the world with a terrifying clarity that you never had when you were healthy. This is the fourth reason why it sucks to be born an outlaw, the realization that your father is just a man, and a deeply flawed one at that. For 20 years, Dutch van der Linde was your North Star. Every crime you committed, every person you killed, you justified it by telling yourself that Dutch had a plan. You believed he was a genius who was just one big score away from paradise. But as the gang moves from the mud of Lemoyne to the humid hell of Garma, and finally to the decaying woods of Beaver Hollow, the mask begins to slip. You watch as Dutch stops talking about freedom and starts talking about loyalty. There is a dark difference between the two. Freedom is what he promised you as a boy, loyalty is what he demands now that he's scared. You see him whispering in the ear of Micah Bell, a man who represents everything the gang used to stand against. Micah is a vulture, a survivor who cares for nothing but himself. And Dutch, the man who taught you to read and think, is choosing the vulture over you. This is the psychological torture of Arthur Morgan's final days. You are dying for a cause that no longer exists. You look around the campfire and you don't see a brotherhood anymore. You see a collection of desperate, frightened people who are realizing they've been sold a lie. You see Bill Williamson's confusion, Javier Escuela's blind faith, and the mounting terror in the eyes of the women and children. You realize that Dutch doesn't have a plan. He never did. He was just a man who was good at running, and now that the world has run out of places to hide, he is unraveling. He isn't looking for a way to save you, he's looking for a way to stay relevant. Every plan he makes now is just a chaotic lashing out at a world that has outgrown him. And you? You are the one who has to carry the weight. You are the one who has to ride out, even when your chest feels like it's filled with hot glass, to do the dirty work for a man you no longer respect. You are caught in the ultimate trap. You are too loyal to leave, but too smart to believe. You are a ghost haunting your own life, watching the only family you've ever known burn itself to the ground because the man at the top would rather see everyone dead than admit he was wrong. This section covers the twisted ending and the answer to your burning question. We come back to that question we asked at the beginning. Was there ever a version of this where you won? The answer is a bitter one. Being born an outlaw in this era meant you were always going to lose your life. But the twist, the one thing that Dutch never understood, is that losing your life is not the same thing as losing the game. In your final hours, on that cold mountain in the West Elizabeth, you finally find your paradise. It wasn't Tahiti. It wasn't a mountain of gold. It was a simple choice. You look at John Marston. You see a man who still has a chance. A man who has a wife and a son who actually love him. You realize that your entire life of violence, all the years of being a weapon for Dutch, can finally be put to a single good use. You can stop the cycle. You give John your hat. It's a simple gesture, but it's the most honest thing you've done in 40 years. You are passing the torch of a life you never got to live. You choose to stay behind. You choose to face the Pinkertons and the traitor Micah Bell, not because you think you'll win, but because your death can finally buy someone else's life. As you lie on that rock, watching the sun rise for the very last time, the why it sucks factor fades away. Yes, it sucked to be born into poverty. It sucked to be manipulated by a cult leader. It sucked to catch a terminal illness from a man you were bullying. But in these final seconds, you are finally, truly free. Dutch is gone. The gang is gone. The money is gone. There is only you, the air in your lungs, and the sun. You didn't get the big score, but you got something much rarer for an outlaw. You got to decide who you were at the end. You weren't a king. You weren't a knight. You were just a man who did a lot of bad things, but who used his last breath to do one good thing. And in the world of Red Dead Redemption, that is the only win you get. The screen goes black, and the years pass. The world keeps turning. Cars replace wagons. The law becomes absolute. The memory of Arthur Morgan fades into an unmarked grave on a mountainside. But for us, the audience, the lesson remains. Why does it suck to be born an outlaw? Because it's a life built on a foundation of disappearing ink. It's a life where your best qualities, your loyalty, your strength, your bravery, are the very things used to destroy you. Arthur Morgan was a man of the past who was forced to live in the future. He was a tragedy in a cowboy hat. But maybe, just maybe, he reminds us that even when you are born into a losing hand, you still get to decide how to play the final card.